Hi my lovelies, welcome to today's video. I wanted to share some studies that I based all my decisions on, how to do my protocol for my cycle. And those of you who are about to have a transfer or are getting ready for a transfer or just want to find out like what is the best thing. I remember that I was very confused before we did our frozen embryo transfers, like what's the best? I don't know. I talked to several friends and everyone took different medications at different times and that just all didn't make sense to me. I was like, I want to understand the biological backgrounds. Now, one of my huge hobbies in life, or like I'm very interested in biology. I majored in biology for a little while, so I had like advanced courses, and I also have been interested like my whole life in biological processes and understanding how life works and how the body works. And I've read probably at least 200 books about the human body and like everything that has to do with it, like life and biology and science overall. Like all those biochemical processes, they were really interesting, and like all the aspects of diet and lifestyle, and like what does sunlight do, what does this vitamin do, and like there are entire books, like there's an entire book about mitochondria and all the aspects about mitochondria. What are they, how did they come about, and like why do we need them, and how can we help have better mitochondria so that we get more energy and stuff, so our cells have energy. So I'm a nerd when it comes to that kind of stuff. So that's just to preface that that's why I always love reading studies, because you ask your doctor one thing and then you ask another doctor another, like the same thing, and you'll get two different answers. And then having talked to different clinics in the Czech Republic when we wanted to get ready for an embryo transfer, it was just so confusing because, you know, one clinic said like, well, you can only transfer one. The other said like, well, we could recommend two. And one said like, well, we need to prep you with estrogen, and then we're going to do progesterone. You should not ovulate. And then the next one said, well, do this, do that. Take all these different things. And so every clinic had different protocols and different, like, the one said, do take baby aspirin. The other one said no. And I thought, like, how do they know? They can't just have this general protocol. Like, I'm an individual and they need to know more about me. They didn't even ask me much about me, about my history. Not much. So how could they know based on just that little information that they had what was the perfect protocol for me? So I thought I need to be an advocate for myself and learn about the latest studies, the most recent studies. What are the actual scientific facts that we know at this point, so I can make a decision what is best for my body, because I know my body. I know like what works well, what doesn't work so well. So our factor was that I'm 47 years old, 46 when I did the transfer. No, well, yeah, right before my birthday. So the factor is that my eggs are old and my partner's sperm is also old. He's older than me. Those were the factors why we couldn't get pregnant naturally. So, but other than that, I have a very healthy uterus. I have very healthy ovaries, and overall, I'm extremely healthy and fit. So my cycles still work. They're not perfect like clockwork, but I have a good cycle. I have been ovulating all the time. I don't miss ovulation. So as long as I know I have a working cycle, even if there's a little bit of variation, sometimes my ovulation is earlier, sometimes a little bit later, maybe like within a 7-day period. Sometimes it's like on day 8 or 9, very early, and sometimes maybe day 15 or 16. But those were factors that I was willing to monitor. It's like if natural is what's good, then I want to do natural. Here's the thing, what I have learned over the years, and I'm going to quote a lot of studies in this video. I'm going to put the links all below so you can find them. The thing that I have learned is that biology is very, very complex. Very complex. It's not as easy as saying, well, then you need this hormone on this day, and then you need that hormone on that day, and that'll fix everything for everyone. It's so complex. There are so many biochemical processes and why something needs to happen at a specific time and why you need a very specific chemical or like a hormone or vitamin in a very specific dose at a very specific time, in a very specific way, in a very specific combination with something else. Everything in your body communicates with everything else. It's not just, you can't look at everything in an isolated way. Your brain, your ovaries, everything is connected and talks to each other, right? That's what I've learned in everything that I've learned in life. And I've also learned that we know a fraction. We know a tiny fraction. And while we can influence a lot of things, if anything, like if any natural process in the body works and it's still, it works on its own, that's always to be preferred because it's perfect. If it still works in a natural way, and if it works the correct way, like it's supposed to work, that's perfect. That's how it was made. That's how we were created to be. It's in our DNA. That's what has worked for like the entire time that human beings have existed. So now I'm gonna get into the studies. I'm such a big believer in, if anything natural works in your body, do it. So here's the thing. I'm going to look on my laptop because I pulled up all these studies. I looked at UT San Antonio protocol. That was really interesting. That is the protocol that they use. Natural cycle frozen embryo transfer, a step-by-step guide. So they divide it up into different steps. Step 1, monitoring of follicle development. You want to watch the follicle. And here's what I learned. When the follicle is bigger than 17 millimeters, that is when you can trigger. That's when you are about to ovulate. But if you don't even, I did an HCG trigger shot, so it was a modified natural cycle, but because of timing reasons, and my clinic was in the Czech Republic, it just wasn't possible to, every day wait and then see, did you ovulate, did you not, and then pretty much schedule okay, in the next 3 days we have a transfer. With the trigger shot, it was just very easy. We triggered, and then 7 days after that, we know that was the right time for the transfer. So the follicle size is very important to see when is there going to be ovulation. The step 2 is the monitoring for the LH surge. And I'm just going to read this off. As the growing follicle nears maturity, the level of hormone LH, that's the luteinizing hormone, which then will cause you to ovulate, in the blood and urine rises dramatically. This is known as the LH surge. For the purpose of frozen embryo transfer, we define the day of the LH surge as the day the urine LH test turns positive. It is important that the LH be monitored on a daily basis, as the frozen embryo transfer will be timed from the date of the LH surge. And depending on, of course, whether you have a 3-day blastocyst or a 5-day blastocyst, that's how you time. So 5 days from ovulation, you would transfer a 5-day blastocyst. A 3-day embryo is not a blastocyst. A 5-day embryo is a blastocyst. So step 4 is the transfer, and they describe the process here. It really literally takes just a few minutes, and a catheter is inserted into your uterus, and that's how the embryos are transferred. They're not implanted. Some people say implant embryos. You can't implant them. The implantation is what will happen afterwards. So then you are supposed to rest for about 20 minutes, and then you are discharged. This is what happened with me. Just lay down they wanted me to lay down for half an hour, and then we could go. And I drove home right away. That was like a 4.5-hour drive. But it was relaxed. Step 5, hormonal supplements. Patients undergoing FET may not require hormonal supplementation when we document normal follicular development and ovulation. So if you really know exactly where you are, so if you ovulate, you actually have a corpus luteum, which along with the ovaries produce progesterone. So you actually have natural progesterone if you ovulate on your own. Technically, you don't need progesterone supplementation if you ovulated, But since we don't know, do you have enough progesterone? Some people have a weakness, especially when you get a little bit older. So I went ahead and did the supplementation, and I did vaginal progesterone, but I believe that it could have worked without it, but just to be on the safe side. And then of course step 6 is a pregnancy test. UT San Antonio says 12 to 14 days following the transfer, but technically you could do it sooner, because 9 days after transfer would mean it's 14 days after ovulation, which is when you're supposed to get your next period. And if you didn't, you can actually do a test. A lot of times the progesterone would mask, like you will not have a period right away, even if you are not pregnant, because of the progesterone. Progesterone tells your body, hold on, we might be pregnant. And then step 7, they say there's a follow-up consultation. So this is just like a sample protocol that they use. But here is what I wanted you to know. There is a study that says natural cycle shows better outcomes than hormone replacement therapy. I'll put all the links below. Then we have another study that says progesterone for luteal phase support in true natural cycles does not improve outcomes. So true natural cycle means you did ovulate on your own. So you have a corpus luteum. That is a 2020 study by Waldman. Then I found a really interesting study that said the high concentration of progesterone is harmful for endometrial receptivity and decidualization. So let me read this article to you because I think it's quite interesting. I thought that was interesting because in the States, I know the standard protocol is progesterone in oil. But if you're using a natural cycle, that might be too much because you are already naturally getting progesterone. You would have to get tested and see, how are your levels? Are you having sufficient levels, or are you having really low levels? So if you're having low levels, it makes sense to get the supplementation. But again, it's a case-by-case basis. You have to know your levels. Progesterone is required for the establishment and maintenance of mammalian pregnancy. Yeah, we're mammals, and widely used for conservative treatment of luteal phase deficiency in clinics. However, there are limited solid evidences available for the optimal timing and dose of progesterone therapy, especially for the possible adverse effects of implantation and decidualization when progesterone is administered empirically. See, you can't just say oh, everyone needs it. In our study, mouse models were used to examine effects of excess progesterone on embryo implantation and decidualization. Our data indicate that excess progesterone is not only harmful for mouse implantation, but also impairs mouse decidualization. In excess progesterone-treated mice, the impaired LIF/STAT3 pathway and dysregulated endoplasmic reticulum stress may lead to the inhibition of embryo implantation and decidualization. Furthermore, excess progesterone compromises in vitro decidualization of human endometrial stromal cells. Of course, that was a mouse model, but there is an indicator which, logically it makes sense. If you have excess hormone, they always say, well, you can't have too much progesterone, but I don't believe that. And according to this study, it's not the case. So too much or too little of a hormone is not good, because it's the balance between all the hormones overall. Like the relationship between the hormone levels has to be correct. Okay, and here comes the definition of decidualization. Refers to the functional and morphological changes that occur within the endometrium to form the decidual lining into which the blastocyst implants. So it's that change. They look for the trilaminar endometrium, but then it goes, the progesterone causes your endometrium to actually change its chemistry so it is receptive to an embryo implanting. Before that, if there's not good amounts or sufficient or exact amounts, the correct amounts of progesterone, the chemistry of your endometrium is to where it cannot receive. It will not connect. It's like it won't connect with the embryo. And I found another really interesting study, which I'm just going to tell you the heading, and I'll put the link below. Early pregnancy maternal progesterone administration alters pituitary and testis function and steroid profile in male fetuses. Just gonna leave it at that. You can read it yourself. So an excess of progesterone can be problematic just as too little can be. So you want to make sure you have the right levels. There's another study that says increased risk of preeclampsia after frozen thawed embryo transfer in programming cycles. That means that's a fully medicated cycle. Again, I think nature it's so complex, we just don't even know what all, like every little detail, all the little processes in the biochemistry. Everything's good for something. It does something to your body. Here's another really interesting one. Frozen thawed embryo transfer. The potential importance of the corpus luteum in preventing obstetrical complications. That's also a 2020 study. And here's what's really interesting. The corpus luteum produces not only E2, that is estrogen, and P, that's progesterone, but also vasoactive products, or vasoactive, I don't know what it means, such as relaxin and vascular endothelial growth factor, which are not replaced in a programmed FET cycle, and which are hypothesized to be important for initial placentation, the building of the placenta. Emerging evidence has also revealed other adverse obstetrical and perinatal outcomes, including postpartum hemorrhage, macrosomia, and post-term birth, specifically in programmed FET cycles compared with natural FET cycles. Despite the widespread use of FET, the optimal protocol with respect to live birth rate, maternal health, and perinatal outcomes has yet to be determined. Future practice regarding FET should be based on high-quality evidence, including rigorous controlled trials. Of course, they are saying we need more studies, but again, it's so much more complex than, okay, all we need is estrogen and progesterone. So we don't need an ovulation because we could just give you progesterone and estrogen. But it's more complex than that. So if you have a natural corpus luteum, it does a lot more than just release progesterone. So it does a lot more. I think everything does a lot more than we think. Like all the glands that we think, they're like just doing this one thing. Oh, it's so complex. It's so much more. And here's another thing. I did research about prednisone or prednisolone. Prednisone, I think it's in the States. It is an immune suppressant, and some clinics want you to be on it just in case, they want to suppress your immune system. So because of natural killer cell potentially causing problems that maybe your body is gonna actually kill the embryo that wants to implant. Now, I didn't take prednisone, but I found an interesting article that said suppressing the immune system won't improve your chances of conceiving with IVF. And it said basically that, this is just a practice. And they did this because, a lot of clinics and doctors will still recommend suppressing your immune system. But even the natural killer cells, there are studies out there that say, we actually need them. If they're overreacting, that's not a good thing, of course, but there are some important things that they actually do that are good for implantation. And I found another study that said cryopreserved thawed human embryo transfer, spontaneous natural cycle is superior to human chorionic, the HCG-induced natural cycle. I had the HCG-induced cycle because of the timing, and my clinic is in the Czech Republic. It's like 4.5 hours away. It was easier that way, but that's just what the study says. It also says that the endometrial thickness was higher with a group without the HCG trigger shot. Now, I never had a hard time. I had a really good thick lining, so probably that HCG shot didn't have any adverse effects like on my endometrial lining because I have really good even without any estrogen, just naturally. I was usually around 10 millimeters, which is awesome. Here's the most important thing that I just want you to take from this video. You are an individual. You're not the same as anyone else, and your body it does very specific things. You're in a very specific place in your life, and there is so much that plays into all the processes that happen with your body. So whenever you decide on the right protocol for you, I think it's really useful if you do some of your homework and you have a lot of knowledge about why does something do, what do all those medications do to you? What are the pros? What are the cons? And then you can decide together with your doctor what would be the best protocol for you. You can also, maybe show him some of the studies. They may not have read all the studies that have maybe recently come out. It seems to me that there's just a lot of this is just how we've been doing it, and that's how it's been working, and that's why we do it like that. And with the clinics in the Czech Republic specifically, because they have tons of people coming from the outside because it's really inexpensive, and they just don't have the time to really spend a lot of time, and people just come in for the transfer. They're not patients before that. They do all the prep work at home with their doctors, and then they just come for the transfer. So it's not this really close personal relationship to where they really get to know you, and they do a bunch of tests and determine what specifically for you is the best protocol. But you want to make sure, first of all, you don't waste your money, you don't waste your time, you don't get disappointed. You want to, of course, try to have the best outcome and, of course, have success in the end. And I feel that doing your homework and actually getting on Google Scholar, research all of those things. I researched literally what are the pros, what do those hormones, what is the positive things they can do, what are the negative things they could cause possibly. And so I found all this information, and I felt like I can advocate for myself because I know me. I know things that, I have a good feeling, my immune system it seems perfect. I don't have a single allergy, never had in my life. I don't have any intolerances against anything. So I decided my immune system is not overreactive. It's very stable, and I hardly ever get sick, and that's a good thing. So I decided for me that prednisone is probably not needed, and that the HCG trigger is good because I think last year it also helped. It helps my body to think it's pregnant. I don't know. For me personally, it felt right. And I guess whatever I did, I don't know if my research, if that paid off, but all that matters in the end is it worked. And now I have those 2 babies in my belly, and I'm so happy. Just do your research and advocate for yourself. Okay, this was kind of long-winded and lots of talk. I will put all the links below, but please get on Google Scholar. I don't know if you love reading those studies. I love them. A lot of times I will just read the conclusion or the results. You don't have to read through that entire study. It's just really knowing the gist of things. Okay, you will start understanding some of those processes and how everything works together to make better decisions. Thank you. Have a great day. I hope to see you next time. Be blessed. Bye.